A list of sensitive themes and topics covered in this episode can be found in the episode description. Hello. I have a fun little treat for you all to kick off our first birthday triple header, by which I mean 3 days in a row of new episodes to celebrate 1 year of TGS. Let me paint a picture for you. It's December. I'm at a fancy holiday party full of podcasters, many of whom are very big deals and honestly kind of intimidating. From across the room, I spot 3 men that I recognize because our shows follow each other on Instagram, and we were both named to the same best new shows list, which is also why we're all at this same party. These are Manny, Noah, and Devan of No Such Thing. I walk over to them and we have a little chat, and one of them, mid-chat, Noah specifically, says, "Hey, maybe you can answer a question about Benjamin Franklin." And this podcast episode was birthed. We recorded it in a studio in Brooklyn in the middle of a literal blizzard. That's how important it was to figure out what was actually going on with this man. Enjoy never looking at a $100 bill the same way again.
On today's episode, was Benjamin Franklin a fraud?
Founding father or frauding father? Try that one.
I might put that in there.
Or you can,
Fraudulent father.
There's no such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing.
So today's episode was actually inspired by a previous episode we did. Last year we did an episode titled "Can You Change the Mind of Conspiracy Theorists?" And as part of that, we asked our listeners to call in with their favorite conspiracy theory that they believed. So as part of that process, we got a call from one of Manny's friends named Kelsey.
I think that Benjamin Franklin was a grifter with a great PR team. I live in Philadelphia, so his image is everywhere to a degree I find suspicious. He's credited with inventing basically everything, from electricity to bifocals to modern-day fire insurance, and I don't believe that one little guy achieved all of this alone. He was never actually president, but was somehow always there as an advisor. An Elon Musk kind of fraudster, the ideas guy with a big checkbook. I just feel like it's extremely possible that everyone hated him and he was a bad hang, but his reputation has been scrubbed clean.
Wow.
I like that it's a bad hang. It's like everyone's hanging out with it. I feel like it'd be the opposite, where he's probably a good hang, maybe not doing so much
Yeah, I would
stuff.
imagine a lot of people wanted to be around him, because of the reputation he had built, fraudulent or not.
Yeah.
You know, well, that was a very brief answer. So I called up Kelsey to hear more of her thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So as she mentioned, one big thing to note is that Kelsey lives in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So she is definitely, I think, seeing more Benjamin Franklin related things than we are. Because when we got this, I remember this when you were editing this episode, Manny, I was like, I don't really think about Benjamin Franklin at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my thought too. I was like, how would you even come up with this? Like, who's even talking about this guy?
Yeah, I had never thought about that theory before, so now I'm happy to hear more.
Well, we found out that you are on a group chat with Kelsey where she sends you photos every time she sees something Benjamin Franklin related. And I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago now, so we have our own. It's not a group chat, I guess, because it's only 2 people. But she now sends me stuff that she comes across that are Benjamin Franklin, and it's a decent amount.
It's a lot. If you're in Philadelphia, it seems like, walking around, you will run into a Benjamin Franklin.
And this is only the stuff
image
she's
of some
sending. I'm imagining she's not sending every single Benjamin Franklin thing that she's coming across. So 2 things Kelsey wanted us to get to the bottom of. It's number 1, why does it feel like Benjamin Franklin hasn't had a proper reckoning? So
right.
in 2020, we were really examining historical figures.
Yeah.
And
Especially the presidents.
Yes, especially presidents. You know, Obama was being called a war criminal. We were talking a lot about
George
George
Washington.
Washington. So why wasn't Benjamin Franklin a part of that conversation?
Yeah.
And then she also wanted us to investigate just sort of the scope of what he's been credited with inventing.
I think just like the huge like broad brushstrokes of the things he's credited for coming up with or inventing feel like so categorically like all encompassing. Like I've just heard like he invented the concept of insurance, and I'm like, what? Like, did any single person do that? And also like that's like such a big claim. And then same with like firefighting, like modern firefighting, and like bifocals and electricity. Like I'm sure he was maybe like a savant, like genius guy who came up with some stuff, but like I think like the lack of specificity is what makes me suspicious, or like, yeah, it just feels so big.
So after that episode aired where Kelsey, you know, ripped apart Benjamin Franklin, another friend of the pod, Rich, was texting us because he's a big Benjamin Franklin
He was
head.
incensed.
Well, which I didn't know, but you know, Rich was so down for Benny.
No, but he's a history buff in
He
his
is a
own
history
right,
buff, but he was
and a proud American.
Yeah, that's true.
He's a patriot.
He's a patriot. But Rich, he was very upset. So Noah, you had a conversation with Rich to find out why he was so irate.
Yeah, Rich's main point was like, it's not fair to say, you know, Ben Franklin is basically what we would see as, you know, Elon Musk today. He was actually kind of doing this stuff. Mainly, he's pointing to his diplomacy. He, you know, made the alliance with the French, which helped the American Revolution, of course. And, you know, just generally, Rich's main point is like, you wouldn't send him around to all these things, these high stakes positions, if he's a fraud.
Yeah.
He's got to be doing something.
Yeah.
Or at least be well liked and trusted in some sense.
A fraud would put themselves in those scenarios.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you go.
Yeah, especially
like, how the hell did you get here?
Especially he's not the president, so it's like
there's no reason
to just have this outsider figure, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
To do this, like to trust that stuff with him, there's got to be something there.
I think the thing about Franklin that this caller seemed skeptical of was his celebrity. I mean, like, the idea of a celebrity is kind of fairly modern, but in terms of the 18th century, he was as close to a celebrity as you could get. The thing is that he used that to his cause's benefit. In some way, he was like a marketer of the American Revolution as much as he was a diplomat and a leading politician. He started arguing for colonial unity like decades before even the Declaration of Independence, which, by the way, he also helped Jefferson draft. So not only did he help draft the Declaration of Independence, he also helped draft the Treaty of Paris, which ended the war. So that set the terms for what the country was going to look like. And he also played an important role in the Constitutional Convention. So, I mean, look, he's there at the Declaration of Independence, the treaty that ends the war and helps establish what the United States is going to be, and then the Constitution. I don't know what more you could want from this guy. Did he do some, like, flamboyant public image stuff? Yes, of course, but he was using that to his advantage. He was an interesting guy. I mean, like, someone like John Adams, for example, people usually thought he was, like, boring, kind of goofy, annoying. But, like, with Franklin, people loved him.
And you can see easily how our two friends here, their ideas are in opposition to each other. But you can also see some areas where they're not necessarily. Like, I think Kelsey's main gripe seems to be all the things attributed to him in terms of like innovation, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Rich isn't necessarily talking about that aspect of his life. He's just talking about
Not as much,
how much of an integral role he played in kind of the founding of the country. I want to see how we can marry these two ideas.
Yeah.
And the personality of it, I think, is key too. Where it's
Yeah.
like that's definitely what led to him being iconic in the sense of being all over Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that also is what, in Rich's telling, is what led to him being the one who trusted to kind of convince people to come to our side and that sort of thing
Uh-huh.
too. So,
Yeah.
like you're saying, they might not be as at odds as we think, as they think even.
As
Yeah.
they think. So we are going to find out if Kelsey is right. Is Benjamin Franklin a fraud? Or is Rich right? Is he our greatest founding father? After the break, we'll find out, does Benjamin Franklin actually suck?
Hi, it's Claire. Thank you for listening to the show. You're currently hearing the free version of This Guy Sucked, so I'm here to tell you about our Patreon. In order to make the show sustainably and independently, episodes switch off between free weeks and Patreon weeks. So if you're a fan of good, accurate public history made by actual experts, consider supporting us and joining our Honorary Haters Club. It's only one tier, which means everyone who subscribes gets access to the same perks across the board. For the price of a pastry at your local hip coffee shop, you'll get to listen to a new episode every week instead of just the bi-weekly free ones, and they'll all be ad-free for you. You'll also get access to the full episode archive, bonus content, early access to merch, and lots of other fun Patreon exclusives to sweeten the deal. Just head over to patreon.com/thisguysucked or follow the link in the episode description to sign up.
I'm Manny.
I'm Noah.
And I am Devan. We are joined in the studio by Dr. Claire Aubin. Claire is a writer and historian at Yale. She also has her own podcast, which you may already know, called This Guy Sucked, which was named one of Apple Podcasts' best new shows of 2025.
In some great company.
And some great company.
Along with you all, yeah. I was going to
Wow.
say, that's literally how we know each other.
And we love this show because it's a show for haters and we love to hate. On this show, Claire, can you give us just your elevator pitch for This Guy Sucked?
Yeah. So every week I bring in a new scholar, a new academic. Occasionally we have like a comedian or do a collaboration with someone else. But I bring someone who is an expert on a person in to tell us why they don't like that person, basically, and why make an argument for the audience for why they shouldn't like that person either. So we've spanned like a huge amount of historical time periods. We talk about people who are very famous, people who are not famous but should be for bad stuff. The argument being that whether you realize it or not, historical figures have negatively impacted your life today and you should not like them, and that you can be interested in them without liking them also.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
Which
point.
we'll get into.
We're familiar with the concept, people who should be famous but aren't. We're getting there.
Do an episode about us.
Yeah.
So unfortunately you don't want to be the subject.
Okay.
I would
We'll see.
say
Okay.
I would say, you
Try
can
me.
come on, but that
Yeah.
is actually in fact what's happening right now.
Interesting.
All right, Claire. So to recap, we have you here because we chatted with two friends of the pod. Our friend Kelsey, who thinks Benjamin Franklin is a fraud. Our friend Rich, who thinks Benjamin Franklin is a national treasure, maybe underrated. So we're going to hand off the episode to you at this point as our historian to sort of break down what's the truth about the Benjamin Franklin.
So part of this is a little bit complicated because the two arguments that he's a fraud and that he's important are not in opposition to one another. So it was funny trying to figure out what the answer to this is, because like one could be a fraud and also important and like memorable at the same time and like a contributor in some other way. And I think there are plenty of historical examples and living examples that we have of that. So I think they're not actually arguing at cross purposes. Like they're not against each other in this. They just have different conceptions of why people remember him.
Yeah.
But I did come up with what I see as the questions that they were asking. I tried to summarize their questions and find answers to them. So questions are like, did he have haters in his day? Would he be taken more seriously if he had been president? Was he stealing credit from other people? Like they asked a lot of, I think, really interesting questions that help us to figure out like how we think about celebrity in history and all kinds of stuff like that. And then the one that I found really interesting is, what are the bad things about him?
Yeah.
And there are some bad things about him.
If we want to cancel him, what can we pull up?
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't we
Which
talk
is
about
very
we should talk about his
interesting.
accomplishments, I feel like.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we
'Cause
start
that's why
with the
that's why we know him. And then we get to the
Let's start
the
with what's
bad
real.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, what do you know about him as his accomplishments?
Flying a kite.
Yeah.
Sure.
Discovering electricity.
Declaration of Independence. The American Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah, he did
Constitution.
those ones.
Yeah, he was at these things.
He was at the Constitutional
He was a
Convention.
diplomat.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about the diplomat. Like,
He was building
Going
this.
around.
In France,
I
yeah.
talked to Rich, so yeah, he was crucial in getting the French alliance, which helped back us up during the American Revolution.
wow.
Yeah.
On the, what is it, the $100 bill?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty famously. Like, we
All
do
about
call
the-
that
Manny
a
would-
Benjamin.
Manny would
All
know
about
about
the.
those.
I've never seen one of those.
It's more familiar with the smaller bills.
The penny?
Don't recognize this cat.
Who's this?
Yeah, so most of these things at least have like a grain of truth to them.
Okay.
He definitely is, for example, instrumental in securing this French alliance. That's right. A lot of these things are true. He does work on electricity. But I will say, work on electricity. He
didn't discover it?
Well, no. So one of the things I find kind of interesting about this is the idea of like whether he was stealing credit from other people for his
Yeah.
inventions or not.
Because he has a name,
Yeah. The issue here is really just kind of like oversimplification. So no, he doesn't steal credit from people, but yes, his relationship to the things he invents and does in science are oversimplified. Sometimes he kind of fails to credit his collaborators on things in a sort of classic inventor scenario.
You know who does that current day? This is not,
I'm ready.
I don't think you would think this person would come up in this conversation. Travis Scott. Famously
You
likes
know?
to pretend that he does everything by himself, to the point where when I worked at Genius, the music company, we would do these series where we'd talk to the collaborators of big famous people, right? It's hard to talk to the big famous people. It's easier to talk to a producer or a music video director. And he would threaten to sue us if we did videos. Like, they had to take a video down because they worked with, I think it was either a music video he did or a producer. He didn't like the idea that the audience would see that he wasn't the only person doing everything.
Oh my God.
He didn't like the idea of being seen as a collaborator. He wants to be seen as like the mastermind or the brainchild of the thing. Yeah, we had to take the video down.
That's
That guy
crazy.
sucks.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Currently.
Also, first time probably someone has brought up Travis Scott and Benjamin Franklin in the same continuum of type of guy. So like
Similar
we're really
energy.
breaking new ground every day.
Scott and Benjamin Franklin.
This is what podcasts are for.
Yeah.
To be real. But actually, yeah, that does fit in part because one of the issues around Franklin's legacy is that he gets credited with being the sole creator of things that are actually sort of transnational global ideas. So the idea of electricity and lightning being somehow related to electricity predates him. He's not the person to come up with this. In part because like ideas don't exist in vacuums. The lone genius scientist guy who is like, I've invented electricity isn't real. That's not actually how science works or how innovation
Like,
works.
no, we wouldn't have figured this out if it wasn't for that one guy with the
Who
kite.
happened to
Yeah.
say a lot.
Yeah.
No one else is thinking about this.
Yeah, like science is incremental.
Yeah.
Innovation is incremental. There's a sort of network of what we would call experimental philosophers and experimental scientists, although they're not really thinking of themselves as scientists necessarily at this moment, because all of these things are kind of mixed together. Like you're a philosopher and a scientist and a doctor and whatever all together. You're just engaging in sort of questions about the world and trying to answer them, much like yourselves. You, Travis Scott, and Benjamin Franklin. And he is part of this network. We know that he's traveling to Europe fairly regularly and coming back and doing stuff. So I imagine that he exists in this space where he's coming up with things by himself is just not real or possible.
Yeah.
We know, for example, that the lightning rod is based in part on European theories around electricity and lightning. There is a Czech priest named Prokop Divish who is also working on grounded lightning rods at the same time. His grounded lightning rod happens about 3 years after Franklin's, but they're working with the same ideas. So that's not to say that he doesn't do these incredible things. but like he doesn't do them by himself.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do them in a way that no one else is considering approaching them. Because science is also a very messy and very iterative process. Like you have to try things over and over and over again and figure them out.
Yeah.
And if he's the first guy to do it in America, like that's great. But he's not the only person on the
working
planet
on this.
capable of it either.
Yeah.
It seems like he's benefited from essentially like the elementary school curriculum, right? Like if the oversimplification happens because they're teaching this to kids.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
So he's getting a lot of credit for. I mean, I didn't read a single thing about him after elementary school. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had, I guess the teachings would have been a little bit more nuanced.
I'm worried about your high school education, but we're going to leave that there. But I do wonder how much of this is, like you said, Manny, like the oversimplification of like teaching kids things, you know, like even like Rosa Parks. Now, Rosa Parks wasn't the first person, to not get up. She wasn't seated in the front of the bus. You know, like there's stuff like that. There's nuance to a lot of stuff that when you're a kid, it's like, you know, can this fit in a picture book?
Well,
it's like Benjamin Franklin, kite, lightning.
We get the gist.
Electricity.
Right. You're not going to tell the kid about all the other collaborators.
Yeah, exactly.
About Czech priest Prokop Divish also coming up with this at the same time.
We need to go to Prague and see what they're learning about electricity.
I mean, and that's kind of generally a problem with how people understand historical figures, right?
Yeah.
Like the real problem is once again the American education system, unfortunately, in terms of how we like satisfying endings. We like people who satisfy curiosity. We like people who we can hold up and say, this is the guy. Because history itself is a lot messier and more complicated than that, and it's harder to grapple with. So these simplifications really benefit us in terms of our ability to understand things. They're often, though, not really that true or that real. And the issue is further down the line when you're like, well, this is the thing I know about Benjamin Franklin. And someone has to say, okay, so not so much. not that.
Kelsey's main gripe, aside from kind of the Philly-centric angle and like the advertisement use, which is obviously way far afield, was kind of like, how could this one guy do all this?
Yeah,
Which is kind of what we're talking about.
Wide range of stuff.
To me, this is my simple explanation, is I think about someone like Da Vinci, like a Renaissance man sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you know, hundreds of years ago, not that many people were educated. So to me, it doesn't seem that crazy that the few people that were highly educated would know about a lot of things and be working in a lot of different fields, whether that be, you know, science, electricity, or politics or whatever, or art. And, you know, Franklin, he was writing, he did almanacs, these sorts of things. So it's not that crazy that one guy would kind of have his hand in all these different pots.
Yeah.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, like fully
Like,
100% it makes sense. The way that we conceive of like sciences and the humanities or art as these separate categories is relatively recent. Like historically speaking, the man who is educated in all of these fields, and they're not seen as necessarily separable. So you can say like, yes, I've learned history, yes, I've learned science or art or whatever, but a person who is educated is well-rounded and interested in all of these things. So like what I mentioned before about this sort of philosopher, physicist, whatever guy, that's very normal because that is part of being educated and interested in the world. The way that we've kind of siloed these things as totally separate is relatively recent because now we've focused in on like becoming an expert in one single
field.
Thing, becoming the person. We, in part because our approach to things like invention has narrowed further and further because we're progressing and we're getting more advanced. So you can be like, I do this one thing. So a lot of these things really benefit or draw from each other. So the Da Vinci Renaissance man style guy, it was a much more common person until recently. And like a thing that proves how good you are and how educated you are and how intelligent you are, that you can engage with all these different things.
I feel like the similarity happens in like youth sports now, right? Where back in the day, if you were athletic, you would play a bunch of different sports. Now they have like 8-year-olds that are like, you're going to be a soccer star. You're only playing soccer. Do not play any other sports. And a lot of older athletes talk about that's not actually great. Like you should, if your child is athletic, just let them play a bunch of different sports and like don't narrow them down when they're so young.
You can choose that choice later on if it's like, okay, you're going to make a career of this.
It used to, even more recently beyond that, using the sports, childhood sports analogy. Being a 3-sport athlete used to be a type of person in the U.S. Like if you're a person who plays baseball, basketball, and football, you are a 3-sport athlete.
Yeah.
That's like, that was a type of high school guy, basically. And now we rarely see that because people are told to
just do one thing.
Yeah, or be like, maybe you should focus on your schoolwork.
Yeah.
And only play one sport. But yeah, so even that is like us narrowing and narrowing. And yeah, all of that is crazy too, because it's like, hey, 8-year-old.
Yeah.
I need you to prepare yourself for a life of CTE.
Unfortunately. Starting now.
LeBron James was famously a 5-star football recruit as well. Maybe 4 or 5 stars. I can't remember, but he definitely could have made a lot of money in football. But
he's a big athletic guy.
Yeah. Some great highlight tapes on YouTube if you want to go back and check them out.
Why don't we pull them up right now? We got 20 minutes.
Why not? To go back to your question, some of the other things he's credited with. So the bifocals one is good. Glasses existed. Having different glasses also existed for distance and for close range vision. From what I understand, things like inventions are not necessarily my specialty as a historian, but from what I understand in the research I did for this, he kind of perfected an idea that had existed, that had pre-existed, or he made a thing that people had been thinking about into a thing that existed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially because we're like, he invented the bifocal, that's so crazy. But if people are switching between 2 kinds of glasses, I feel certain someone said, I wish these were one pair of glasses, you know?
He basically made like a scrub daddy. You know?
He just put it
like, we got sponges. This is a better version of a sponge.
What if we had a smiley face on?
And you could put your fingers in the...
That'd be perfect. All right, let me do it. Let me get in the lab.
To be fair, I am a huge scrub daddy.
Oh, yeah. That's all I got.
I have scrub mommies, too.
Yeah,
Those
scrub mommies are actually better.
Scrub mommies are better than scrub daddies.
Can you guys give me the quick pitch on what actually is the benefit of these compared to a normal sponge?
I think there's better sponges. They're thicker. You know, sponges, more, I would say, horizontal.
Yeah, so these are more almost
they got more
ball.
depth.
Yeah, and the wetter they get, the softer they get. So they start out like kind of crispy in a way that's good for exfoliating your pan.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And then they get softer, so they're more workable, which is great. And they have more crevices.
Yes.
Crevice options.
Yeah. And the scrub mommy has 2 sides.
Okay. Like a hard side, like a scrub side.
A scrub side, and then like a softer side. They're
I'll
great.
try it out, and we're not putting this in until they give us some money.
Yes.
At the end of the episode, sponsor us, Scrub Daddy and Mommy.
Some other things, and these are more like infrastructural that came up, were like the fire department, postal service.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? Like how important was Franklin to those being set up?
Fire brigades existed.
That was
for a long time. Pretty famously,
they certainly had fires before.
And they did have fires, and they did have community responses to fires. Definitely existed.
Okay. Not individual vigilantes.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin actually invented both fires and fire departments.
That'd be impressive.
And the concept of insurance, I don't know. I also feel confident that predated him, at least to some extent. With all of these things, we're looking at like what we consider very obvious concepts now that he might have popularized or he might have formalized in some way. But again, like, I don't necessarily think that these are things that we should be like, that's his thing. That's him who did that. One of the things that I found interesting in the conversation that you had with Rich is he talks a little shit about John Adams in it. Mm-hmm. And I found that very funny because John Adams kind of emerges as the opposite of Ben Franklin in the way that Rich says. Mm-hmm. But one of the things he's annoyed at Ben Franklin for and writes in his diaries and in letters about, as in John Adams is writing this, is
not
that
Rich.
Franklin, like,
that might be there too. Yeah.
In his diaries, Adams is writing that Franklin, like, is getting too much credit for stuff. And he feels frustrated that he's being credited not just for inventions, but for like the whole revolution and for all of these ideas. And he feels frustrated that people are kind of laying all of this at Franklin's feet. So this goes also to the did he have haters when he was alive thing, that there was already frustration while he was alive at how people were engaging in this like myth making around him.
Did John want some more credit? Was John like, hey, I'm doing some of this shit too, nobody's talking about me? Was that his real issue, or was it just like, all right, enough?
This sounds like the more classic kind of hating, where it's like, I'm tired of hearing about this guy.
Yeah, I think it's more of that. I don't think there's as much of John Adams being like, it should have been me. But I do think he's like, okay, there were a lot of us at the Constitutional Convention. Like, hold on. But yeah, and even like Thomas Jefferson is also writing like, look, he can't be president because his temper is a little too. He says, I think he says he has a supple temper, but that he's not suited in terms of temperament to the difficulties of actual leadership. I mean, there are people who are while he's alive being like, hold on. Like, we can't, this guy is not necessarily everything he's being held up to be.
So he did have haters, but how widespread was this hate? You know, these people are you're saying writing this in their diaries. Are they saying this publicly? Or are they just whispers behind the scenes?
It's like, I hate these guys. Yeah. But it's like, that's different than, you know, the little people down below.
Not as much public hate. It depends on what point in his life you're talking about. The British are really frustrated at him, for example, because they're like, man, you kind of messed this up for us. Like the British are like, you know, maybe we wouldn't have succeeded, for example, if he didn't go to France and do this. So that's what we would consider sort of hating from someone who like lost a war.
I'd be pretty mad if I was, England at this time.
So that one is more understandable. The people around him do have these frustrations, and a lot of them end up being kind of frustrations around like, is he a good employer? The normal stuff. But there isn't like this widespread hate movement while he's alive necessarily until you get to his late 70s. He dies in his mid 80s, but his late 70s is when he decides to take an abolitionist turn. And then people who are like, no, we like slavery are like, we hate this guy.
Interesting.
That being said, there is another group of people who might hate him, which would be all of the people he had enslaved. And so those people might hate him, but we lose them in the historical record, which is a pretty common issue with, for example, enslaved people who were enslavers, where we lose the voices of the people who had like that level of relationship with him, that level of antagonistic relationship. And so often when we think about them, because we don't have them in the historical record, we're like, everyone loved him. And it's like, maybe not the people who couldn't leave his house. You know?
Right.
It's a pretty sobering thing, but it depends on who you consider a person when you're thinking about like what hating on someone is, you know, haters, and who counts.
Can you walk us through his arc towards abolitionism?
Benjamin Franklin died in 1790. He takes this abolitionist turn, or starts thinking about it, from what I can tell, in the early 1770s. He moves fully into what we would call his abolitionist kind of phase in, I think, 1781. He becomes an open public abolitionist, takes over control of this very public abolitionist group. He's doing all of these things, in part because he's like, I think this might be bad. He's also surrounded by other people at this moment in the 1780s, where wealthy people living in the North are starting to be like, maybe this isn't good. So this is actually when the fault lines start to appear between who thinks slavery is an acceptable institution and who thinks it's not. But he takes this weird turn, and we think around 1772. 1775, he starts thinking about it more and becomes open and public about it in the 1780s. But before that, when he's asked to comment on slavery, he like outright refuses. So for most of his life, not only does he own slaves or have people living with his family as their slaves, he also feels basically fine with it, and is like, when asked to comment on it, says he's not going to. He also is making money off of slavery because he is the editor and the guy who runs the Pennsylvania Gazette, where people are advertising slave markets and slave sales. So he's actively making money off of this. And he also, when people have like missing or self-emancipated slaves, so people who run away, he's allowing these missing and runaway slave ads to be run in his paper. So he like enables slave patrols and slave catchers as well. Not super good.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add to the abolitionist thing is at the point that he becomes an abolitionist, he still has people who are enslaved living that he like owns, and he puts in his will that when he dies, that's when they can be free.
How convenient.
Yeah.
And they both, the two that he names in his will, both die before he does. So they die still enslaved.
Didn't George
So-
Washington do something similar?
Yes.
some
Emancipated his
bullshit.
slaves after,
Yeah.
only after he died.
Yeah, this is kind of a classic thing, actually, that people who are classic as in like this is a common
Yeah.
thing. A thing that happens where people are like, abolition is good. Not yet, though.
Yeah, wait until I'm gone.
Yeah,
then y'all
you
can figure that
you
out.
can't do it, but the next generation might be equipped. You've lived too long like this. I'm too responsible for you. I'm not going to, for example, offer you your freedom and then pay for you to live a life of freedom and take care of you that way financially, which he absolutely could have done, and other people did. Instead, he was like, when I'm gone, you can go too.
It's what frustrates me so much about this kind of argument on the right from like the Charlie Kirk types, that like you can't really blame the Confederacy that much because slavery was normal. It was like the norm and they didn't know any better. But there's so much information that disproves that.
The question we have
Even
to
the
ask
guys
also,
who had the slaves were
You're
like,
like,
you
ugh.
can be free after I die. It's a clear indication that they knew what they were doing was
absolutely.
Yep.
And one of the questions we have to ask when that comes up, when someone says, "Oh, this was normal," it's like, for who?
Yeah.
Because again, the calculus then is who's a person.
Yeah.
If the calculus is a person who enslaves someone and someone who is enslaved, and we don't have the enslaved person's thoughts on the record, and we do have this person, we default to the person who says it was normal.
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
The person experiencing it does not think this is normal and
Yeah,
good,
exactly.
right? Like
Yeah.
And
they
it might even be normal on the basis of like a society, but it doesn't mean it was like default fine.
no, and also normal doesn't mean good or positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a really frustrating and kind of circular argument, because it really just gets back to like, well, who do you consider a person? Whose thoughts do you care about? Whose feelings do you care about? Who matters here? You know, to bring John Adams up again, which I think is interesting, to head off this is normal, all the founding fathers had them argument, you know who did not have slaves? John Adams, who emerges as kind of the secret hero
My boy
of
John
this
Adams.
episode, and neither did his cousin Samuel Adams.
Damn.
In fact, of the founding fathers, we traditionally think of, for example, when we're looking at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, a little over a quarter of them were not slaveholders. So if you can say it's normal to be an enslaver,
Yeah.
it's also normal not to be.
Do we
As
know
normal
if-
as it would be to be like a vegetarian or something.
Yeah.
Do we know if that was because of like historical happenstance or they had a position against it?
It depends on the person. Sometimes it's kind of both. Sometimes they're like, it doesn't make financial sense for me. They're expensive, right? Like not just as in like to purchase, but the care and upkeep of another human being is expensive. And so some people couldn't really like afford this. And this is just using the sort of like really kind of like cold assessment here. But there's that. There's some people did also have like a real moral, ethical obligation where they felt like this was not right. So those people count too.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that when we think about Benjamin Franklin, we're like, look at all these amazing things he did. The 7 people that he, over the course of his life, purchased, sold. At one point, one runs away from him in England, and he like goes on this quest to go find this man. Discovers that the man is in this other woman's house in England and is having a better time there, basically. And he's like, okay, fine, I guess you can stay here. And he sells the man. So again, this is not like he says, you're having a good time, I guess you can stay because you're happy.
What am I getting out
He's
of
like,
this?
so you do need to pay me in this scenario, and you can stay in England. But yeah, I mean, he for almost his whole life makes money off of slavery and benefits enormously from enslaving people. So I think that should be part of the conversation when you think about if he's important or good or a fraud or whatever. And that goes to the what's bad about him. That's mostly what's bad about
I was gonna say,
him.
okay, we're gonna cancel Benjamin Franklin, the slave stuff. pretty big.
It's a bad one.
It's up there.
I don't. Yeah, I'll speak for Rich and say we don't support that.
Gary Nash, who's a historian who works on the American Revolution and works on like black and white relations during and after the American Revolution, says, like many other white colonists during the years leading up to the American Revolution, the Franklins grew to dislike slavery, but not so much as to sacrifice their investments. So they don't like it, but they don't like it like they still like it enough to
not change what they're doing.
to not risk some money, basically. So
just like we won't do it again.
Yeah,
and they do it again, though.
Start it over.
You know, what's interesting is they say, like, well, we don't want to do this. But if you have a kid, that kid's gonna become a slave too. It's a really it's a murky thing, and it's a thing that makes people really uncomfortable because you have to grapple with a whole lot of other stuff about American history when you think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my argument for the what's bad. He also, does the thing that that a lot of white colonists at this time do, where he says we need to take the West, indigenous peoples over there. Who cares about them? He's not overtly like we hate them, we should kill them. He just is like we should take the West too. We need more space. We need more people. The way that America is going to survive is by bringing as many people here as possible. And he's not alone in thinking this, and it's not specifically about wanting to cause the annihilation of this enormous group of people, but he doesn't have a problem with it necessarily. So you can, I guess, add that as another tick on the list.
Up next, what did Ben Franklin think about running for president and older women and farting? All of that after the break.
Hi, friends. Multitude has a new show out, and it's hosted by my friend and friend of the pod, your friend, lots of friends, medievalist and noted Charlemagne hater, Professor Matthew Gabriel. American Medieval is a podcast about the Middle Ages, but with an American twist. Every week, Matt is joined by an expert scholar to talk about either some bit of the medieval world itself or how Americans have, throughout our history, used the Middle Ages to say something about ourselves. Because if America has never been fully modern, it might be because we've always been a little bit medieval. Matt is the best, and I'm so incredibly stoked that this show exists, if only because now we are very, very close to having a critical mass of historians that can bully all the scientists at Multitude. New episodes of American Medieval are available every Wednesday. Look for them wherever fine podcasts can be found. Next to those podcasts, like on a lower shelf, is American Medieval. So go give it a listen and check out AmericanMedieval.com to learn more. Would he be taken more seriously if he had been president? Is another interesting
Did he
one.
have any ambitions to run for office?
No, he's 81 at the Constitutional Convention.
Oh
he
my God.
is old. For context, George Washington is 55 at this point.
And
my whole
I know.
completely
Oh my
warped.
God.
Yeah, what the fuck?
And this was before 80-year-olds were running for president.
Yeah. This was not normalized at the time.
Yeah,
He would have been ahead of his time if he did.
Yeah.
Also, is 80 it's already old today, but
Yeah.
back then
that was very
that
old.
must be like a
That's like 120-year-old back
yeah.
then.
Yeah, I
When
mean
you
it's
consider
very
inflation.
old.
Yeah. 120, yeah. Damn.
I mean, he's not like it's not like insane. There are plenty of 80-year-olds that existed
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah, but
not as often
it's
as
not the
now,
norm.
because you could get dysentery pretty easily.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like you could get taken out by all kinds of stuff at a
Yeah.
younger age. Like they didn't have penicillin.
Yeah. Some basic stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, there is that.
So he was in no shape to. It wasn't like they passed over him. It's like, guys, I'm too old.
He's
for
like,
this.
Yeah.
I'm not even in the running.
That wasn't gonna happen. I don't
Yeah.
think that was a real conversation that people were thinking about. But yeah, it does reframe a lot of this stuff when you
Yeah.
think about like he lived, his whole life other than the stints in Europe, like in the US or what would become the US, and he's 81 when we get a constitution.
Of course he was able to do all this stuff then.
Yeah.
He had a lot of time.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's part of this. He's not president, so he can spend his time doing all kinds of going on side quests basically
exactly.
for his entire life.
A trip to Europe back then was not very quick.
Yeah, he's
No.
getting on the boat.
But yeah, he's like he has time to do a million other things because he doesn't hold political office in the same way. So he kind of is given this like guiding grandpa uncle role in a lot of this.
What
He
year
is
is
Unc.
the
Benjamin
convention?
Franklin is Unc.
I'm basically curious, like, what he was up to during the war.
Oh, all kinds of stuff. He was in France. He was like being a diplomat and securing alliances. Basically,
Was he like busy with that, or was this isn't also a time when he's like kind of doing all the inventions?
I think kind of simultaneously doing all of these
Okay.
things, but a lot of the inventions do kind of predate the Constitutional
I see,
Convention.
I see.
And there's
Naturally.
like during the war, he's off getting alliances, meeting people, hanging out. Yeah, and not fighting because he's 70 years
He's old as
Oh,
hell.
fair enough.
Yeah.
yeah. These all feed into each other, though, right? Because he's in France, he's meeting all these philosophers and scientists and whatever, and then he's getting ideas, he's coming back. He invents the Franklin stove, which is a stove that is kind of credited with, like, he's credited with this new stove technique that, by the way, is immediately improved upon because it's not that good. But he's still remembered
Yeah.
as this guy who comes
We
up
needed
with
the
stove.
step one, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like his relationship to the war is more in like a support, being in other places
Gotcha.
doing stuff role. So he has time. He even there kind of has time to dick around.
Yeah,
if he
interesting.
wants to.
Who would we say is like the modern day equivalent of Benjamin Franklin?
He's
I don't
doing
know.
diplomacy
What do you think?
and
also
innovation.
inventing things?
Yeah.
It depends on your idea of diplomacy,
Yeah.
because there are plenty of like tech billionaire guys
like
who are
Bill Gates or something
yeah,
like
who are
that.
all over the place doing all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah. Elon.
Yeah.
But he's not really doing diplomacy. At least Bill Gates has like the charities and stuff.
Elon skipped the diplomacy stage. He's just directly involved
Yeah.
in the elections.
Yeah.
He's not really having conversations. He's just doing
No.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of weird to compare like Elon and Benjamin Franklin, because we're like, okay, well, here's our idea of an inventor, like
Yeah,
a crazy
right.
inventor guy.
Yeah.
But because Benjamin Franklin does actually invent a bunch of stuff or like come up with stuff and do stuff. And he also like does objectively help the U.S.
Yes.
become
Yeah.
a country, rather than just be like, let's destroy everything and hire someone named Big Balls to like take over.
Who's the big balls of the American army?
I don't know. But this does fit with, actually, I said that we should talk about his MILF thing.
Yeah.
The inventors, famous inventors, are freaky guys. It is a long-term problem in the US. And Benjamin Franklin has a lot of like weird creepy uncle stuff that he does. And not in like a scary way,
Okay.
but in like a Elon and like the waifu stuff.
No.
No?
Yeah, like,
Am I too online for this?
No, like he just loves the anime looking.
Yeah,
women.
and
Oh,
he's
okay,
yeah.
Oh,
Benjamin
yeah.
Franklin is like that a little bit too.
With-
Well, so there.
Who's
Yeah,
the
same
anime
boy, yeah.
woman in the Benjamin
So-
Franklin?
Who's the Grimes back then?
So we have letters from him where he does a couple of things. So one of the things he's famous for is writing something called Fart Proudly, which is
Fart Proudly.
which a fun thing about a lot
I'm
of guys in the 18th century is they love talking about farting. So that's something that Ben Franklin is really into.
And so the word fart was like a thing back then.
Yeah.
He invented that.
But yeah, he writes this thing that's for, I think it's sort of like a science magazine, like to encourage young men to engage in scientific inquiry. And so he writes this manifesto, I don't know how to describe it, about how they should practice farting, basically, and how they should like do it as a scientific experiment, and like they should undertake special diets. It's crazy. But like
Whoa.
we have
I thought
him
he was
writing
doing like a
about this.
metaphor at first.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
talking
Means
literally. Yeah, but then
farting.
he's saying, do this and then you'll learn how to engage in scientific inquiry if you do this farting
some
experiment.
tests.
But like back then they were making fart jokes and being like, you know what teenage boys love is fart jokes. And he was
Even
like,
into today.
yeah. And
That's
then
the time.
yeah. And then the other real weird thing that we have from him, it's a letter that's known as Advice to a Young Friend on Mistresses. And it's telling this young friend.
Probably 71.
Yeah.
Just a few years younger.
He's telling this young friend that having sexual urges, being horny is normal, and the way to solve it is by getting a wife. And he says, you know, they're hot when they're old too. Like you get an hot old wife, basically.
Yeah.
And like you're kind of like, okay. But some of the things he writes about it are
Open-minded king.
bananas. And I'm sorry to my parents who are probably going to be listening to this. The Wikipedia page on it literally says, whether serious or humorous, the letter is frankly sexual. He says, he talks about things like the lower parts continuing to last as plump as ever, and says, and as in the dark, all cats are gray. The pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an old woman is at least equal and frequently superior. Every knack being, by practice, capable of improvement. So he says the older she is, the better she is, the more practice she has.
That is incredible.
Isn't that an incredible
Nothing
thing?
wrong with that, then.
Yeah.
So add that to the uncancellation.
Yeah.
That supersedes slavery. Forget it.
And we're assuming by older woman, he's maybe, I mean, back then he could be talking about someone who's 20. What is the age? Like,
What?
It's not cast aspersions.
No, I mean he has a wife. Like he has an old lady
so this
wife.
is later on in his life.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's writing this to a young friend,
young
being like,
person.
he's saying, "Hey, I know, I've got a
You could get an
hot
experience.
old lady.
Okay.
You could get a
Wow.
more experience." He says,
I'm just trying to
"Look,
poke holes through this.
yeah." He's like, "You're no, I mean it's
foolproof.
yeah." He says, "You have urges. You're a young man. Get a wife, and the bonus is." It just
only
gets
getting
better.
better.
It's
Yeah.
only getting better.
All cats are gray.
All cats are gray in
I
the
like
dark.
that.
He's saying not
In the
take. He
dark.
said don't take advantage of her either. Get married to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not saying just go out there and sleep with her. No,
Yeah.
make her your wife.
Put a ring
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And he's saying this is the best way to fulfill all of these urges
Yes.
is
Makes
by
sense.
being loyal to
Finding-
an older woman.
finding
She
a-
has
yeah.
some more experience.
yeah.
I can't find nothing wrong with
That's
that.
pretty good.
No, there's absolutely nothing
That's
wrong.
pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it is wild. Pretty much every historical figure, if you look hard enough, you're gonna find something crazy like
I
this
love
about
that.
them.
So he
good
wrote
stuff.
this. This was a letter he sent to his friend.
Uh-huh.
Man, if I send y'all some shit like that, delete it. All right, after you read it,
Burn it.
we don't need history to be reading our
Be like,
letters.
hey, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm dating. I
Yeah.
can't really find someone. And then Devin sends me that. Hey, listen, all cats are gray in the dark, my friend.
It does have a very like uncle at like a barbecue
Yeah,
vibe to
yeah,
it, if
yeah.
it makes
Come
sense.
over here. Let me tell you something.
Yeah. Look, you've been single for too long.
They wrote too
I'm-
much down
yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
You know, so
I
stuff-
always wonder if they
word of
know
mouth.
it's going to be read by the public in the future. Like, I imagine in this case, the guy who received the letter, maybe his family, after he died,
Yeah.
gave it to a museum or something because they knew who it was from.
Mhm.
I always wonder if
Yeah, all the
you
letters.
say some
Where they're
crazy
writing
shit.
for an audience.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
People were writing letters the way that people are like tweeting
Yeah,
now, though.
yeah,
like
yeah.
because we would call it an epistolary culture, so like letter writing culture. This
Yeah.
is like how you
That's
get
just
your
how you
thoughts out. So
okay.
people are sending thousands of letters to each other. So this is something that you would just fire off. Like he was
Yeah,
like,
right.
"All right, I need to give someone advice.
He's
Here we go."
at my young boy, you know, like if he's on Twitter.
yeah.
Yeah. Directly, the guy's tweeting
He's treating
out.
it like clavicular.
Yeah. He's like, I'm
Listen,
young,
brother.
I'm
Yeah.
horny.
Yeah.
What should I do? And then Ben's adding him.
Wasn't the original tweet icon when you click to tweet something like a quill? Like something
Yeah,
in
yeah,
pen?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
See?
There you go. He
Same
invented
thing.
that.
There's continuity, historical continuity happening here. Actually, we're all engaging in epistolary culture
Wow.
More or
at this
less.
moment in time if we still use Twitter.
That's beautiful.
So I guess the last question we have is why isn't he today more scrutinized? You know, I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like a lot of modern day figures, especially post 2020,
Mm-hmm.
we were looking at everybody.
Yeah, like Jefferson, they got his ass.
We were going through all these people.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all like
Lately.
him?
They did
He
get
did this
Jefferson.
shit here.
Yeah,
You know?
Jefferson really got it, and he deserved to.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jackson
Oh,
got
yeah.
it too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Harder than ever.
Yeah. So why I don't remember us talking a lot about Benny during that time period.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Why?
Do you-
Why?
Do you have any memories of this?
And why'd he get
No,
off
no,
on
I
that?
don't. But yeah,
Yeah.
my only guess is like because he's not a president,
Wasn't
so
a
we mainly think of him. Of course, we know this diplomacy and stuff, well,
Yeah.
except for Manny. But but
Some of us.
we think of the electricity thing as kind of the
Yeah.
iconic stuff. I feel like when you're
Yeah.
a kid, right?
Yeah.
And then you know he's involved in the other stuff, but we don't put that much importance because we don't see him like a George Washington
Yeah,
who was the leader of the
Yes.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the presidents obviously take, the first.
Yeah.
They're the top
They're the
founding
first
fathers.
wave.
And then like the 1B, we got Ben Franklin right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even though he's probably more famous than a few of those presidents, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he wasn't like a general or something like that.
Yeah, so there's not like other stories about him in that way. I don't know. That's my only guess for why we haven't had that re-examination. And then the only other association, sorry, I'll keep going.
Please.
is he's on $100 bills, so it's like all about the Benjamins. We like that's a cool
That's cool.
aspirational thing. It just we like money.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he's all over Philly in sunglasses.
Yeah,
as we
and all of
heard.
our friends in Philly see him all the time.
Mhm. On ellipticals
Yeah.
and things
Yeah.
of that nature.
I think there are two answers to this. So the first answer is basically what you've said. He's so fascinating. He does all this interesting stuff. He's all over the place. He has all these side quests. He's going to all these places doing interesting things. And he's doing this while not holding enormous formal state power.
Mhm.
So we don't tend to criticize people who we see as being like helpers of the machine rather than the machine
Yeah.
themselves.
Drivers.
And like we love the kooky genius guy. Like that's an
Yeah.
archetype that we've been working with for a very, very long time in a lot of different contexts. We know the interesting genius dude. Like
Yeah.
that's if you like go in your head, climb into your head and think about this, like you could probably come up with a ton of like wacky guys.
My boy Albert. You know?
Yeah, wacky guys who come up with stuff. They look funny.
Yeah.
They send weird letters about farting and sex with older women. That's a guy.
Yeah.
Like that's an archetype of a
Sure
guy.
is, yeah.
And so people are like, okay, well, we can just kind of box him away that way.
That's a different thing.
Right.
Yeah. And so we don't need to scrutinize him because we're like, oh, he's a founding father, but he's 80 when he's
Yeah.
doing it and he's kind of wacky and so that's I think part of this. And then the other part is because we don't really scrutinize historical figures that much in general,
Yeah.
actually.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
off the top of your head, when you were like, who are the people that we think of? We're like Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson,
Yeah.
which is like, oh, like the Trail of Tears guy.
Yeah.
Like the people, you
Yeah,
know,
pretty
like,
bad one.
yeah, these are, and
The
someone
worst of the
who,
worst,
yeah,
as
and we've
they
got
say.
Jefferson and Sally Hemings. Like these are things where
Yeah.
we're like, oh, pretty famously, they did really, really bad stuff. Not
Yeah.
like daily level,
Yeah.
everyone's kind of doing bad stuff,
mhm.
like really egregiously
Yeah.
bad things. But everybody who doesn't do that or doesn't do things that rise to that level, we often kind of leave them alone.
Yeah.
So let me make you a pitch for a podcast. Yeah, like everything I'm saying here has been said before by much more knowledgeable people, like people who work on Franklin
Yeah.
directly. So I'm just reiterating their ideas. But like people are uncomfortable with having to reassess historical figures because if you reassess the past, it makes you have to think harder about what you're dealing with right now. There's a reason that like current modern state policy is about rewriting and erasing parts of the past that are uncomfortable, and specifically the parts that we have started to reckon with, where we've started to be like, at this at Monticello, for example, or at Mount Vernon, let's have exhibits on the people who were enslaved and living here. Let's have these in national parks. Let's talk about the indigenous people that we've like booted off this land or killed or whatever. Like those are the things that people are trying to get rid of, in part because it makes you like think about the time that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
And so when we reassess people, it feels like, like it creates a sense of discomfort. It can also create a sense of like satisfaction and relief when we reassess someone, to feel like someone is being written back into a narrative. But that often is at odds with the discomfort.
Yeah.
You know, it's less satisfying to say, this person was complicated,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, or this person did some good stuff. Also, the people who, you know, were forced to work for him for their entire lives didn't think he was that great, actually, probably. That's a weird thing to like sit with and think through, basically. And so often we'll switch to, no, he's great. He's really important. And, or no, it's just he's fraudulent. But rather it's like,
All of these are true.
all of these things are true at the same time. And also he sucks. And also he's smart. And also, you know.
Yeah.
But we like a one-dimensional guy when we think about history.
So now, after all we've learned about Ben Franklin, we think it's important to bring it back to our original debaters, Rich and Kelsey. So we're going to call them up and see how they feel about all this.
All right, so we are joined now by our two competing factions of the Ben Franklin legacy. We have Kelsey and Rich from episode 1. So we've now talked to our expert. We've talked to Claire. We have some information we want to share with you about good old Benjamin Franklin, and then we want to get your reactions. But first of all, thank you guys for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having us.
It's very serious, very tense.
I know.
Very tense, yeah. It's palpable. Yeah.
I'm nervous.
Tension in the studio right now is feels like I'm in court.
So we'd love to just get some general reactions, thoughts, maybe starting with Rich.
Yeah, sure. So I think that in terms of the main question, was he overrated, underrated? Was he like legit for what he's known for? I think that, yeah, there's a lot of mythology around him, around this idea of being a Renaissance man. I think part of that is he was as close to a celebrity as you had back then. But I think that he used that to his advantage. Yeah, he basically the Kardashian of the founding fathers. So I think he used that to his advantage for his diplomacy, especially with France. And I think that, like, if we're talking about like the first, like the premise of this debate, basically, I think that even if you just took his diplomacy with France, which helped bring them to the war, which ended up winning the war for what became the US, I think that is enough for like to be considered a founding father in a real way. I think there's plenty of evidence, yeah.
Yeah, another thing we realized was that your two points of view are not even necessarily in contrast with each other, because Rich, you just think he, is adequately credited for the things he did in his life. Kelsey's just fucking annoyed at seeing him everywhere. So it's like they're not even necessarily in contrast with each other. But Kelsey, just your general thoughts.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Rich, and I'm glad that moving forward
great to meet you.
Friends.
We can put this in the past.
I was a little scared to learn that I had a potential nemesis out there in the universe, centered around Benjamin Franklin. So that's a relief
What'd you get
to me. I'm so excited about everything that we've learned through this exploration. I think that something I'm reflecting on is that this all tracks because I just kind of hate celebrities. So maybe that's kind of what I'm responding to. I also, I think I have some anger at like the kooky little genius guy archetype.
The mad scientist.
Yeah, and I think, it's really interesting to think about how my positionality and like where I exist in history just really complicates my ability to even fully understand that as like a norm. Because I feel like I exist in like the hive mind era of like information sharing and discovery. And so the idea that like I kind of live by is like nothing is original and we're all making everything together and like the best things that we do are together. And so the idea that like this one little guy could come up with all of these things on his own without crediting anybody else just like comes into sharp like tension with that. But that's a really interesting, I don't know how I would have felt back then. And I'm excited to learn that he's pro-MILF. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that was one of his strongest positions, actually.
Yeah, he never wavered on that,
Thanks for tuning into this episode of This Guy Sucked, a member of the Multitude Podcast Collective. This episode was a collaboration between This Guy Sucked and No Such Thing, and edited by a dynamic duo who have never even met each other, Noah Friedman and Julia Schaffini. All of our theme music was written and produced by John Adams adjacent Marshall Dean Williams. If you'd like to support the show and get access to all episodes, including 2 extra episodes per month, and access to our full archive of episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or to our Patreon at patreon.com/thisguysucked. You can also support TGS by giving us a 5-star rating or a review wherever you're listening to the show, or just telling a friend or two to check the show out. That would rock. See you next week.